Welcome back to Tech, Tesla, and Trends. Now, one of the things to keep in mind, in my last video, I was discussing how the impacts of the TeslaBot upon our society and the things to keep in mind and to be prepared for, and things not to necessarily be afraid of, but to understand. So when you understand that TeslaBot represents a product that can be manufactured at will, you begin to understand, as Elon does, and he pointed out in AI Day, he said, what is an economy? Productive entities times productivity. It's not clear that there is a limitation on capita, and that an economy, thus, is quasi-infinite, and that it will fundamentally transform civilization as we know it. Those are pretty bold words. They should definitely cause you to pause, and I would seriously recommend pausing and thinking about that, because what we are about to engage in as a society, as the TeslaBot comes into existence, is going to alter our fundamental understandings of who we are as people. There is no limit to the number of TeslaBots that can be made. And that will change how we as individuals are employed, how we interact with each other, and some of the other crazy things that can occur. I think of some of the opportunities of being able to ride along within the images or the camera of a TeslaBot engaged in perhaps difficult or dangerous activities, or at depths, or in space, or wherever that bot may be employed. It is something to keep in mind that there will be games and adventures and other creative activities that come into this play. Again, the mind is a creative place. We as individuals are of infinite worth in that regard, as we apply ourselves and create that which was unique within us. That is the spark. That is something that has value for the world around, and we must generate it. It is very, very key in my mind. So, from an economics perspective, as you look at that, well, going back to that grocery store example I had in the last video, if you have a grocery store employee who's being paid, say, $16 an hour, and they're working, let's call it 50 hours a week or whatever. We'll go with 50 hours. So that's probably more like an Amazon guy, but that comes out to we're looking at probably $800 a week, and roughly $40,000 a year. That's probably more than your average grocery store person makes, but I think that's probably more in line with a warehouseman. And that probably costs the company about double that for the benefits and all the other packages that are associated with having an employee. So roughly that employee is costing, for moving items from point A to point B, roughly it's costing them $80,000 a year. That's an important thing to keep in mind when the TeslaBot is projected at $20,000. Now, how many of us believe that that'll actually be the number that comes out? I'm not one of them. But even if you double it, let's engage in that thought experiment. Within 1 year, that TeslaBot has already paid for itself in wages alone. Not to mention all the other things it didn't require. So it pays for itself now in 6 months. That's pretty impressive. But it gets even more interesting as you contemplate some of the other ideas. So you have 4,800 hours roughly gained in productivity, because the human is only able to work roughly 2,500 hours out of that year. Whereas if you're charging that TeslaBot and it's working, let's call it 20 hours. If you're charging that 20 hour rate or 20 hours of productivity, you're earning easily an extra $75,000 in a given year out of the same functional space of a humanoid shaped object. Keep that in mind. Again, if you're performing physical labor, your job is fundamentally at risk. No questions asked. And you can cry about that, but it is absolutely on the chopping block. And the other thing to understand is that essentially makes that TeslaBot roughly 3% more effective than you as an individual, roughly making it equivalent of a $128,000 employee. Or that's what it's bringing back into the coffers of any organization that is employing it. So rather than costing, it is returning value to those organizations. As you keep that in mind, you will gain a better understanding of the impact of the TeslaBot upon our society. It is something that you should not underestimate. You should prepare for and be positive about it, because it is a change that is coming. You are not going to stop that. It is something that is economically where we are today due to the inflation and all the other factors that are impacting our world. These numbers are compelling. They're going to drive corporations to that level. They're going to drive many people who have who have maid services and chefs and other things. Probably chefs a little less so, but it is a thing. Background dropped out on me. Hilarious. Anyways, the important part of this to keep in mind is that for Tesla, if you just go with 1 million bots, that is roughly $20 billion in revenue. Now, how does that impact society? Well, I somewhat agree with Elon that at some point, for those that are unable to adjust and unable to become productive on their own through creative means, again, this is what you must prepare. You need to become creative in your endeavors. How do you produce value for other individuals? Then you will be able to survive in this new economy. However it develops, however it shapes, I believe that the creativity of the individual will become a key component of that economy. But for those that can't adapt, Elon believes, and I somewhat agree, because we already have those welfare systems in place, that universal basic income will become a detail that must become part of what we are as a society. Now, the other thing to understand is that what makes something of value in an economy, it's scarcity. Well, when TeslaBot's labor is ubiquitous and available everywhere, how much is that labor worth? Well, from a perspective of those that are utilizing those services, almost zero. From a perspective of those that are avoiding costs, again, their costs are minimal. So that has a direct impact upon the way the economy or the dollars flow between consumer and producer. So within any economy, it is that scarcity value that is priced. When you can't find a particular model of car that you're seeking, but somebody else has it, that car is worth a lot more to that individual who owns it because he's the only one or she's the only one. When they are the only one who possess that in a given area, the value of that particular vehicle is greater than the value may be at the standard sticker price. So keeping that in mind, you have to recognize that the things of value change. Now, labor will alter fundamentally, but the reality of it is, some will say that the air you breathe is free. This is true. And yet, if you take a look online, you can still pay $20 to take a hit of oxygen. So think about that and understand that there is still going to be a fundamental level of an economy occurring. It's just going to change. It will be altered. The same thing goes with, bottled water. We're willing to pay for bottled water. Who knew? Obviously, if you're living in an area where water is bad, bottled water is a good thing. So there is going to be a level at which the economy will adjust to the abundance of labor. And that's really important to understand, because for those of you who are wondering, well, how are you going to charge it? I guarantee you part of the abundance that you're going to be looking at is something that Tony Seba calls superpower. And that's something that we can discuss at another time. But if you're curious now, Google Tony Seba and superpower. There's hundreds of videos out there discussing how an abundance of electrical grid energy will change the world we live in. And that's something I will definitely be discussing in the future. But Ray Kurzweil definitely nails that whole abundance process and where it's going. And Ray Kurzweil and Elon Musk are friends. So understand, this is all part of a greater plan that exists in his mind as well. And we as individuals have an opportunity to recognize that Elon's giving us clues. The TeslaBot's coming. If you're smart, you're preparing for that. You're preparing and changing your skill sets, because anything that is physical in labor will become abundant and therefore worth a lot less, because abundance decreases the value. It is scarcity. Think here. Your brain. You are scarce. There is not another one of you on this entire world. You are unique. Keep that in mind. Figure out a way to utilize that uniqueness within you. I promise you that is of great value. And you will find a way to utilize those skills along the way as you are pondering these changing economy trends and the technology. There's a lot more to come. But for now, we'll talk to you later.